And the last story I'm going to share, that's my gift. This is the hardest story to share. And when I wrote the book, I wrote the first chapter, and I knew I'll write it about how Dad helped me in business. And then I wrote the last chapter, the story of his last day. And I cried for 3 days, and I knew that I could write the rest of the book. So this is the story. I told you the story about my brother Johnny and how he passed away coming home for Christmas that year, and we buried him on Christmas Eve. He died December 23rd. Fast forward, it's 5 years ago, so, 2004, 6 years ago now. And my sister Joan is diagnosed with esophageal cancer. She's the oldest child. My dad has lost his oldest son. He's about ready to lose his oldest daughter. We don't know what to do with this. We're all so sad. It's just a very hard time for our family. Dad's 88 years old, and he's doing great. I mean, he's at the boat. He's holding cord at the butcher block all the time. He's doing great. The minute, however, that he had to sign the do not resuscitate order for his oldest daughter, she was a widower, so her husband had died before, so Dad signs that. He drove himself from the assisted living facility where she was, and he went straight to Shawnee Mission Medical Center, and he checked in with chest pains. And this was a couple weeks before Christmas, and they said, Mr. Bichelmeyer, you have congestive heart failure. If you don't have a quadruple bypass, you're not going to make it into the new year. Your heart's failing. He said, that's fine with me. He drove himself home. I don't want surgery. He told all of us, don't you stay with Joan. She's going to die anytime. You be with her. I need to get my house in order. Things are not looking good for me either, and that's fine with me. I've lived a good life. So he worked. He left envelopes for all of us, $100 bills to make sure we went to the boat and gambled. One told us exactly what kind of celebration he wanted and said, you know what, we'll probably get a deal if we have a 2-for-1 funeral. So you hold both of us until one goes to the other. Always the deal maker. So, after a few days, he couldn't drive himself back. We were with Joan. He wouldn't let anybody in the house. He called the ambulance. They took him back, and he's in intensive care. It's the week before Christmas at this point. Joan's going to die any moment, they tell us. She can't possibly last anymore. She can't talk anymore. Morphine drip. She's pretty much out of it. She'd kind of point at things. And Barbie, who's the boss of the family, she really tells us all what to do. She points to me and says, you go stay with Dad in intensive care. He wants hospice to be at home. He wants to die at home in front of the fireplace. We're going to try our best to get him home. Joan wanted Jane, my next sister. Everybody else was coming in from out of town. The boys, they stayed at the market. They didn't want to, it was hard for them to be around. So I find myself alone with my dad in the intensive care unit in his hospital room. And he's totally coherent. His heart's failing, not his mind. And I'm like, about where you are, Randy. And my dad's right here in the hospital bed, sitting up. And he's looking at me, and he charmed all the nurses. He was putting comeback sauce on everybody who came in his room. And then he said, take these wires off me. If I go, I go. I don't care. I don't want all this stuff on me. I want to be comfortable. So he got comfortable, and he's sitting up in his bed, and then he looks at me, and he goes, wow, you look really uncomfortable. And I said, well, I am, Dad. He said, well, Lynn, let's do something about that. And he took his big hand. I told you his hand's huge and gnarly. And he went like this. Come on. Climb on up here and snuggle with me. He said, come on, these nurses won't care, they love me, snuggle with me. So I climbed up into the bed and I snuggled with him, and I can't look at anybody who's getting teary-eyed. And he said, snuggle up here, come on. And I climbed up just like I did on that picture you saw on my daddy's lap. I snuggled with him, and I put my head on his shoulder, and I just lost it. You know, you start crying, you shake. And he looks down at me and he says, Mary, really, are you okay? And I looked up at him and I said, Dad, really, are you okay? And I'll never forget what he said. He said, yes, I am proud of who I am and what I've done. I like what I see in the mirror. If this is how it ends, then this is how it ends. I'm ready for this. I've spent my whole life preparing for this. I'm ready. And then, because it's always all about me, I looked at him and said, good for you! So happy for you, Dad, but what am I going to do now? Who's going to inspire me now? Who's going to be my go-to guy whenever I'm down in the dumps? My best person, my person who gets me back on track. Who's that going to be? And without missing a beat, he just looked down at me and he said, oh, Mary, that is so easy. Your mother and I have taught you well. Inspire yourself. Inspire yourself. And we got him home in front of the fireplace. It's the last thing he really said to me. He died the following morning on December 21st. The significance of this is we went to see Joan. We told Joan, you can go now. Dad's gone. You can go. You can go now. She kept pointing to the clock. Her death certificate says she died at 12:01 a.m. on December 22nd. The significance of this, on the calendar, my dad found a way to beat his oldest daughter and his oldest son to heaven. Dad's passing the 21st of December, Joan's the 22nd, and Johnny, his oldest son, years before on December 23rd. Wow, what do you do with grief like that? Well, we had the double funeral. We had a big old celebration, and I went back to work. And then I started writing, and that's how I inspired myself. I wanted Chase and Nick, my 2 boys, to know their grandpa. So I wrote this book. Little did I know that I'd be in front of people like you and people all over the country, talking about how to succeed in the people business and leaving them with the message. To live in hearts we leave behind means not to die. My father, I hope, inspired you. Now it's up to you to inspire yourselves. Thank you.